All power to the people. All power to the people.
In October of 1966, Merritt College became home to one of the most controversial social and political organizations in the United States. Founded by two students in reaction to the injustices across the nation, this organization galvanized young people in Oakland and throughout the world. Join me, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, as we explore the unique story of Merritt College, home of the Black Panthers.
We're used, we're brutalized. The police in our community occupy our area, our community, as a foreign troop occupies territory. And the police are there not to, in our community, not to promote our welfare or for our security and our safety, but they're there to contain us, to brutalize us and murder us.
The summer of 1960, we moved into this house. With that, I saw the college, you know, and I said, whoa, I gotta go over here and check things out. And one day I walked out of the school auditorium and I noticed there was a street corner rally going on across the street, 2 blocks down. A guy named Donald Warden. The Afro-American Association's come here today to tell it like it is. We are African-American people. We are people who have a descendancy of Africa, of great culture and great civilizations. I said, oh, I should step by this guy. That's what this rally is about. So I listened, you know.
As the climate of this country was changing in the 1960s, the civil rights movement began to raise questions in the minds of the community and push the envelope towards changing the evolving conditions in Oakland.
I was born and raised in the Bay Area when the Empire of Japan and the Empire of the United States collided in the Pacific in 1941. The Japanese population on the West Coast were interned in concentration camps throughout the country. We were no different than the others. My family was relocated to Topaz, Utah, to a concentration camp in the middle of the scenic Utah desert. After spending about 3.5 to 4 years in Topaz, I was brought back to the Bay Area to live with my father's family in West Oakland. Even prior to World War II, there was a significant African-American population in West Oakland as a result of the railroads. And the African-American Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters was very strong in Oakland. And one has to recall that in 1945, residential segregation was still the law of the land. There was a great deal of similarity between the concentration camp experience and the racial segregation. So the West Oakland ghetto was a self-contained community. 7th Street in West Oakland was like whatever the main drag in Harlem is. Growing up in West Oakland was one of the most significant experiences for me because I was immersed in African-American culture.
Well, you have to put it in context of what the segregation meant psychologically on the African-American population. It was degrading. You had to be socialized to how to deal with certain frustrations because you would be killed, literally killed.
Let's say it's a grandmother who was raised with parents who were direct descendants of slaves, who were taught, like my great-grandmother, don't speak up to white people. You'll lose your life. She wasn't a fearful woman. She just wanted to keep her life and keep her children's lives.
At that time, the bus boycott had started in Montgomery already with Rosa Parks and stuff. And we would watch this stuff on TV. We would watch the whole civil rights struggle. And my mother used to get so upset. She used to like start cussing and throwing stuff at the TV. And she would say, boy, don't you ever let nobody treat you like that. You know, because people was getting hosed down for trying to vote.
There was a visible absence of any black police officers, for instance. I knew only of 2, but there were no black police officers in any numbers on the Oakland Police Department. So racism was pretty pronounced. It was day-to-day kind of reality for young guys hanging on the corner as I did.
You could not verbalize a negative towards a white person or something that's the white institution in front of white people, because they had all the authority, they had the laws, they had the guns, they had the economic power.
I grew up in Washington, D.C., where the police routinely beat African American men and women for nothing. So I grew up understanding how important it was for somebody to say, stop.
These 2 policemen were dragging this teenager, and they started beating him and kicking him and poking him, I mean, really shoving their sticks into, you know, into his stomach. And it was like everything that had gone on down south was now in your face.
From the early slave revolts forward, there hadn't been an organized movement, and certainly not of young people, to say no to police brutality and the colonization of the communities. And I'm using colonization intentionally. That's not rhetoric.
The police had all the authority. But nonetheless, I mean, it took people that had courage, strength, will. They were committed to what they were doing. And it was not only African Americans. There were a lot of whites coming in from the East Coast and up north, and some in the South that believed that there ought to be a change.
This is what we want. An end to police brutality. This is what we want.
Merritt College is important to the struggle of the black community because we had the first black studies program in the country. Then Cornell, then New York UNO, but the first black studies program was at Merritt College, inspired, promoted, and developed by the Black Panther Party.
If you look at the history of those that were leaders, they're educated in what they were thinking. It was a new way of thinking, new way of doing things. The Panthers were about the black community and trying to upgrade them, trying to provide an opportunity for the people living in the flatlands to be proud, to exercise their rights. So it was challenging, but it was exciting at the same time.
We met over here, sometimes 3 times a week. And we divided up categories, and we, in effect, categorized 4 different course concepts, 4 different course syllable concepts. Because we had 2 courses in Black American Studies, 2 courses in African Studies. And this is what we were after, because we was organizing the campus for this, and we were trying to show Dean Olson, we got all these people in here who are interested in this course. Well, I don't know if we can get it this year, and we says no. Well, Huey walks in, and as he walks in, I never forget this, he was coming around the back, and Dean Olson says, now, Newton, you're not a student here anymore. And Huey says, well, for that matter, Dean Olson, you're not a student here either. I'm here to support Bobby Seale. This is a community college. I live in the community. I live right down the streets in the community. So I'm here to support him for the need for Black American history.
When the Black Studies courses got started, then people from all over the community, African Americans from all over the community, came and took these courses because it was access to information, it was access to history that they'd not learned. And it was during the heat of the Civil Rights era. That's where I experienced the Civil Rights era, was on this campus.
That particular community college was the nexus. It was the impetus for our Black Panther Party, and also it launched ethnic studies programs, the seeds of that, the beginning of the African American curriculum that now exists in every college, not just here in California, but the breadth of America, has its birth at Merritt College with Huey Newton and Bobby Seale, who were the precursors to African American studies programs. So that particular college gave expression to primarily African Americans, or blacks, if you will.
Instructors began to teach things that we know were not true. The slave master being a benevolent keeper of ignorant slaves and treated them well and all of that. Well, we would get up in class and tell them that's crap. That's a lot of crap. You know, if that's the case, you know, why weren't there people from white society slaves? Sure, they didn't enjoy working.
These students hadn't heard these things before. Their idea was, oh, you know, we black people are just walking around, handkerchiefs on our head, looking for the white man to tell us where to go. But I changed every bit of that. And I said, where that exists, it's because we have not been allowed to be women and men in full control.
Merritt College at that time was also known as the Little Harvard of the East Bay. Merritt College transferred more students to the University of California than any other community college in Northern California. One had to do with proximity. Another reason was the quality of its faculty.
Administration at the college began to feel the pressure that they had to do something because black students were beginning to rise up and demand it.
The Panthers didn't go and ask those who were in charge of schools, is it okay if Miss Arrington comes up here and teaches? No, We want Cecilia Arrington up here. Hire her.
When the students demand, hey, give us a black president now, it can't be done. And if they come to the academic senate and demand things, or even close the door and put pressure on us, there were even some bullets distributed, not with guns, mind you, but telephone wires were pulled out of the wall. And so, yes, the faculty was under pressure. And they wouldn't have gotten very far if they had asked very nicely to be part of things. Because I knew the leadership well enough that I, in my bones, felt that this was pressure, it was not direct confrontation. And we did get a black president. The first black president of any Northern community college.
Norvell Smith, the president, highly intelligent, very capable. And the Black Panther Party said, by promoting black studies, you will have an even finer institution.
Dr. Norvell Smith gave me the opportunity to come home and share what I had picked up there at the university as a result of my formal education, and I hope I've done well. Dr. Smith passed away about 3 or 4 years ago, an outstanding educator.
When we began to see people come in to Merritt from who had been to Vietnam, now they're coming over and telling us their stories firsthand, from down south, telling us firsthand what's really going on in Vietnam, what's really going on in Europe, what's really going on around the world. And so, and now we're not getting the news from the newspaper or from the TV, which was whitewashed, if you will.
When you're in the military, you hear a lot of stuff and you find out a lot of stuff civilians don't know about. So I was a couple of years ahead of the American public regarding what was really going on in Vietnam. I began talking with buddies that were coming back. They were telling me stories I couldn't quite believe. They were talking about Zippo-wing villages, going into villages and burning the whole damn place and wiping out women and children. And this was years before My Lai. And I said, wait a minute, I can't be a party to that.
Can't stop now. Can't stop now. Sister Harry.
In the Civil War, 186,000 black men fought in the military service, and we were promised freedom, and we didn't get it. In World War II, 850,000 black men fought, and we were promised freedom, and we didn't get it. In the Korean conflict, the so-called police action, a war, we fought there, and we didn't get it. Now here we go with the damn Vietnam War, and we still ain't getting nothing but racist police brutality, etc. We are against oppression.
We took up the issue of black men being drafted into the war in Vietnam, so we should resist the draft. This would be a protest to resist the draft. Every seat was taken, and it may have been 100 or more or so people standing in the aisles. And I was the master of ceremonies for the whole 2.5, 3 hour program. And I picked up the poem from Round Stone. The very first lines of the poem said, Uncle Sammy called me full of Lucifer. Uncle Sammy called me full of Lucifer. Well, I don't give a good eagle-eyed McFleagle triple whammy damn for I, Phyllis Foster, will not serve. Uncle Sammy, don't shuck and jive me. I'm hip to popcorn jazz changes you blow. You know damn well what I mean. You school my naive heart to sing red, white, and blue stars and striped songs and to pledge eternal allegiance to all things blue, true, blue-eyed, blonde-haired, white chalk, white skin with USA tattooed all over. When my soul trusted Uncle Sammy, loved Uncle Sammy. I died in dreams playing war for you, Uncle Sammy. For you, Uncle Sammy. You jam your emasculate manhood symbol puffed with gonorrhea. Gonorrhea of corrupt, unreality myths into my ungreased nigger ghetto black ass of my Jewish, Catholic, Hindu, Islamic, Sioux. What? Sure, free public health penicillin cured me. But Uncle Sammy, if you want to stay a freak show strongman God, fuck your motherfucking self. I will not serve. The crowd went wild. This crowd, I mean, they loved that poem. When I recited that poem, yes, oh my God, Mama, this blew Huey's mind.
After the assassination of Malcolm X, Huey Newton and Bobby Seale came together to form an action-based group focused on social change called the Black Panther Party.
I had a one-man ride up the street here. I says, I'm gonna find my friend Huey. I told Huey he had to help me get a new organization going because they killed Malcolm X.
Huey Newton came by my house in North Oakland and told me that he was putting together a new organization called the Black Panther Party and wanted me to become a part of that. So I immediately accepted the offer because I was searching to find something to do to make my life relevant.
In 1964, I became a full-time student at Merritt College. As I was getting seated at Merritt College, I ran into two guys whose families I knew, well, really three. The first was Bobby Seale. Then there was David Hilliard, who was a longshoreman at the time. Then I ran into Huey Newton. I knew the Newton family. I knew Melvin Newton. He was my age. Huey's a little younger than I am, about 4 years younger. Huey was in pre-law.
Huey and Bobby, I met them both at the old Merritt College campus. They have forums as well. Actually, on the rear side of the campus, it was literally a soapbox and full of debates and speeches and just full of excitement.
I guess it was a dawning of new ideas and things that we were later to put into practice.
Got Castro started the revolution along with Che Guevara, with 12 of them all together. They realized that they wouldn't be able to topple the oppressive regime in Cuba. What they were essentially was an educational body. They engaged with the army, they fought with the army, and they showed the people that the army was not bulletproof, that the police were not bulletproof, and that Batista's regime was not a regime that was impossible to topple. So the people started to feel their strength. The Black Panther Party feels very much the same way. We think that this educational process is necessary, and it's the people that will cause the revolution, and it's the people that will cause the change in the country. The Black Panther Party is simply the vanguard of the revolution, and we plan to teach the people the strategy and the necessary tools to liberate themselves.
And Bobby entrenched themselves in the philosophies and writings of Mao, Marx, Guevara, Malcolm X, Du Bois, and others to help illustrate and formulate a 10-point platform. This became the catalyst to the Black Panther ethics.
When Bobby and Huey came out with their 10-point program, they ran it by me. I said, it looked good. And so I signed off on it. And then Huey said, we want you to join, Richard. I said, what? I said, I know you two are crazy, but are you guys colorblind? I'm not black. That's when Huey came back with one of the most significant statements he's ever made that I remember. He said, I know you're not black, Richard, but I'm asking you to join because the struggle for freedom, justice, and equality transcends racial and ethnic barriers.
World revolutionaries. We studied Malcolm X, who had a great impression on us. And he talked about the right to self-defense. And he challenged us with his philosophy, saying that we should be standing up, being men, protecting our community, protecting our mothers and wives and children in our community, and we had a perfect right to do that.
Initially, it was called the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, but that was because of point number 7 of the 10-point platform program. We wanted immediate end to police brutality and murder of black folks. It could have been another point that would have been the focal point of the Black Panther Party. But it just so happened that that was the most important one at that particular time because of the increase of police brutality and murder of young black folks around the country. So, and that was why the patrols and all those things were initiated and put in place.
I was a witness to all of the malfeasance of the Oakland Police Department, and I could understand why the people in the community were so hostile about this issue, so sensitive.
Now, we did that great patrol in January. It took 2 months to get to that point. 14 people, and we got out of the car. Now, Hewitt was a stickler for following the law. Remember, he's in law school. We know every damn law on the guns. We know all the Fish and Game Code laws and other laws. You cannot ride in the car with a live round in the chamber of a rifle or shotgun. Did not apply to a handgun. A loaded weapon is constituted a loaded weapon when you do have a live round in the chamber. You cannot point a loaded weapon at a person because under California law it constituted assault with a deadly weapon, et cetera, et cetera. We knew that backwards, forwards, sideways, and catacorner. We walk up, 20 or 30 people are on the street corner. Some more accumulate. But somebody walks out of one of the little stores in this little nightlife area in 7th Street and say, it's dark. He says, what they standing out there for with them sticks in their hand? Somebody said, man, them ain't no sticks. Them guns. Guns? Get the hell out of here. Well, when he's talking like this alerts the cop, but it also causes Huey to turn around and says, no one leave. Everyone stay where you are. We researched the law. You're citizens. You have a right to stand and observe police officers just like we're a new political organization, so stand here, no one leaves. And as Huey turns around, the cop is now standing, You have no right to observe me. Huey says no. Southern District of California State Supreme Court ruling states that every citizen has a right to stand and observe a police officer carrying out their duty as long as they stand a reasonable distance away. A reasonable distance in that particular ruling is constituted as 8 to 10 feet. I'm standing approximately 20 feet from you and we'll observe you whether you like it or not. And some sister on the sidewalk said, well, go ahead on and tell it, brother. Is that gun loaded, the cop says? He said, if I know it's loaded, that's good enough. Well, I have a right. He would step back. You have no right whatsoever. He recited something else related to the Supreme Court, somebody versus so-and-so, and blah, 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 blah. Therefore, this is my private property. You cannot remove my private property from me without due process of law. Step back. You cannot touch my weapon. And another brother standing on the sidewalk said, man, what kind of Negroes is these? And the cop said, well, is it loaded? He says, clap, clap. He says, like I said, if I know it's loaded, that's good enough. And then another brother says, clap, clap. He jacks around. And then the crowd on the sidewalk is saying, oh, shit. And they're jumping back. They're moving back. And the brother, the young arrestee that was with his hand on the back of the trunk, he ducks down behind him. Hey, y'all, don't shoot this way, bro. And the cop is pissed. And I looked at the cop. And he's really not scared. He's just pissed because he is outnumbered. He's literally pissed because he's outnumbered when he looks and sees what he's looking at. He really hadn't taken a look to see how many of it was. And he gets his arrestee and puts him in the car and shut the door and protect his head. And then he's walking around the car and he stops. Then he walks towards one of the Panthers a bit to look, because she got these big earrings on. It's a female with this afro and this bush jacket. And I guess to make sure she's really a woman, and he gets in the car and drives off. Some little kids come around the corner. One kid has obviously went and got some other kids. Come on, see, and they come running around going, I told you, look. And little kids, they the new black police.
People felt like they were heroes. Like finally somebody had the courage to do something instead of being scared or not say anything at all.
When we first started, we had a police alert patrol, and we would patrol the community. If we saw the police brutalize anyone, we would put an end to this. Usually the police wouldn't brutalize anyone if we were on hand because we were armed, and if the police arrested the individual, we'd follow him to the jail and bail the individual out, whether he was a Panther or not. And we would gain many recruits like this. So therefore the community started to say that, well, these people are really concerned about our welfare.
I read an article in Ramparts magazine, and the article was about a young man named Huey Newton, and it described the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, which was its original name, and the for self-defense dropped later. And what he had been doing, the article said, was patrolling the police and telling them, quoting the law to them, a law book in one hand, an unloaded gun in the other. Tell the person their rights, arrest them or let them go, but do not harm this person. So it was a street patrol. I thought that was a great idea.
During the period the Black Panther Party was active in Oakland, the juvenile crime rate actually went down. I kept track of crime statistics in Oakland because I had to know the Oakland Police Department and all that stuff. That was part of my job as field marshal. And I have seen where the crime statistics for homicides, robberies, armed robberies actually went down during that period. Now, why? Why? Because these young thugs that were on the streets, when you give hope and you give another alternative to people that don't have that hope, don't have that alternative, you can produce positive results.
So the patrols were actually implemented as a measure to bring about the cessation of the murder and hostilities against black people by the Oakland Police Department. And Huey Newton and Bobby Seale decided to do that through the patrols and had a chilling effect on the police overall.
It's a natural thing for anybody to defend yourself, especially oppressed people in this country who've been stepped on all their lives, And we have a new generation, people like myself coming up, we ain't taking it. So those kind of things brought about the people not being brutalized, because people would retaliate. Because you can't come down the community shooting up people because people stick guns out the window and shoot your butt. You have to think about that now.
Is not only did Huey have a shotgun and Bobby a .45 during those days when they patrolled, but he also had a law book under his arm. So he was a law student. And when they were doing the patrols, it wasn't just they were just out there with the gun. He would take the law book and read from the law book, stipulating to the police officers that this is totally legal, given the Constitution of the United States for us to bear arms. So we never violated the law. We were standing on the law. And the one thing that's been amputated out of our history is that law book. Nobody even know anything about it, or very seldom hear about it. But Huey Newton stood on the law. We were always articulating the law. Nobody was arrested for carrying those guns because no laws were being broken.
Now the media took a tiny thing, tiny in terms of its intention, of a man patrolling the police, and made it look like, and said that it was white-hating, extremist, bizarre behavior, a white-hating extremist organization.
From Watts to Brownsville, we fight misery. But there won't be no more. Won't be no more. There won't be no more. Won't be no more. Rats, dirt, and kids who are hungry. There won't be no more. Won't be no more. There won't be no more. Won't be no more. 'Cause we've seen how to be free. How to be free. No more pigs on our streets. Well now, no poverty to this way of life. We're closing the door, so there won't be no more. Won't be no more. Won't be no more. Won't be no more. There were times we stood by like we could not see. But there won't be no more. Won't be no more. There can't be no more.
The state capitol march in Sacramento, California, brought the Black Panther Party more national prominence as well as growth and respect. East Bay legislator Don Mulford sought to achieve the elimination of the Black Panther police patrols.
Mr. Mulford, your bill, you held your bill back to strengthen. What do you have in mind?
Well, first, it's my intention to make it a felony to bring a loaded weapon into the state capitol. I think that the incident points out that, shockingly, that the laws are inadequate, but also serves to emphasize the fact that the laws are inadequate to protect the innocent public when bands of armed people, let me make it perfectly clear, this has nothing to do with any racial incident, because in my testimony yesterday there were 5 white groups I discussed and 1 Negro group. But when bands of armed people with loaded weapons can move about our streets intimidating and frightening citizens, then I think we should act, and we intend to act.
Sacramento, I led an armed delegation to the California State Legislature specifically to read Executive Mandate Number 1, that I, Eldridge, and Huey Newton effectively contributed to the writing of Executive Mandate Number 1. And that was in opposition to the California State Legislature attempting and having a bill to stop us from carrying loaded weapons. In other words, they weren't saying you couldn't carry a weapon, you couldn't carry a loaded weapon inside city limits. So that's the law and the reason I went to Capitol in the first place. I read the statement out front where Ronald Reagan was already speaking, but he was off to the side of the large, broad walkway leading up to the Capitol steps, to the legislative Capitol steps.
Well, I think it's a ridiculous way to try and solve the problems that have to be solved among people of goodwill, and there's certainly nothing that can be done in the line of goodwill when Americans have guns with even the implied idea that those guns might be directed against other Americans.
In effect, the kids left him. He was speaking to youth of America, these 8, 9, 10, 12-year-olds. They saw us, the young white kids thought we were a gun club. They thought we had neat clothes and neat 30-06s and stuff like this. And the press followed them.
I have these Black Panthers up here with guns on the second floor. Of the Capitol? Check. Wait a minute. Now, wait a minute. Right in the office. Wait a minute. Are you under arrest? Am I under arrest? Am I under arrest? You place him under arrest. Go ahead, bro. Am I under arrest? Am I? Take your hands off me if I'm not under arrest. Am I under arrest? I'm telling you to take your hands off me. Take your hands off me.
What caught me at first was Bobby Hutton. The camera was on this young guy. He was my age, and he had a shotgun, and he was leading the whole delegation. And that kind of froze me in my tracks. I said, look at this. I never seen black people with guns before, especially at the Capitol. I mean, this is the first time ever kind of stuff.
Cameras and shotguns and rifles pointing all up. We all crowded in the elevator going up. Then we come out. Then we're walking down another long hall back the other way. You just have to go this way. Well, the press is running in front of me, really. I says, which way? This is up this way. And so I got to a little gate, and a guard was standing saying, you can't come in here. And I said, what do you mean? We don't have a constitutional right to go to the spectator section? You know, and before I could finish what I was saying, the press people had jumped the thing and bumped the guard and really kind of knocked him out of the way.
I'd like to make a statement now with this respect. Statement of the Black Panther Party for self-defense on the Mulford Act now pending before the California legislature. The Black Panther Party for self-defense calls upon the American people in general and the black people in particular to take full note of the racist California legislature, which is now considering legislation aimed at keeping the black people disarmed and powerless at the very same time that racist police agencies throughout the country are intensifying the terror, brutality, murder, and repression of black people. At the same time that the American government is waging a racist war of genocide in Vietnam, the concentration camps in which Japanese Americans were interned during World War II are being re-innovated and expanded. Since America has historically reserved the most barbaric treatment for non-white people, we are forced to conclude that these concentration camps are being prepared for black people who are determined to gain their freedom by any means necessary.
They said to get the news media out, get those cameras out of here. Then it was after that, the Panthers followed in. They said get those guns out of here. Nothing happened. We weren't arrested. And went to stand on the lawn for a minute. Then went to the filling station about a block or so away. And then all of a sudden, you saw all madness was broke out.
Cops. Ours is legal. Yeah, well that's legal too. If yours is legal, I don't see how y'all can be no better than us.
You don't know the Constitution, right?
Not like this. Sure we do. We're well aware of the Constitution.
You have no right to take my gun away from me. You break the Constitution like. Right. No, that's all. He's breaking the law, come here and arrest him.
Suddenly, they surrounded that service station. And then I told everybody we take the arrests. You know, and put your guns down, we take the arrests. And the guns were really in the car, you know, at the service station. Then they come up and told me, they says, you're under arrest for carrying a concealed weapon. I said, you see this weapon and you're calling it concealed. You're under arrest. I said, oh my God. But I was never charged with that. I was charged with disturbing the peace of the California State Legislature.
Is this the pamphlet you're talking about? The pamphlet says that the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense calls on the American people in general to take careful note of the racist California legislature. Why do you believe the legislature is racist?
Don't you know? You're a part of it, and you're obviously, it's a white system. It's not obvious to see where we're at. So.
What do you mean?
Yeah. We just read the pamphlet and you'll see what we mean.
You say to read your pamphlet. This is the pamphlet that the man presented me with. It's called A Statement of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense on the Mulford Act, now pending before the California legislature. The Mulford Act would control the use of arms, especially loaded weapons, and would prohibit them. These men seem to have loaded weapons with them. The statement seems to indicate that these people feel that the black people have been enslaved throughout most of their lives, that the white society is responsible for this, and then they go on to say the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense believes that the time has come for black people to arm themselves against this terror, the terror of the white people presumably, before it is too late, and the pending Mulford Act brings the hour of doom one step nearer. Do you believe everything that's in that pamphlet?
The pamphlet speaks for itself.
They jammed the guns up. They took some of the guns. They put the bullets into the chambers. So that means that you were in violation of the law. They did all kinds of things right there on the spot.
The cop was asking, well, what do we arrest him for? And supposedly some guys on the squawk box hollered back, the governor wants them arrested on any goddamn thing. And that's what happened with the Sacramento scene. Of course, I wound up serving 6 months in jail for that.
Stop all jive, send a pig to heaven, put a pig out of luck, 308, set them straight, stop his tricks, keep a pig from your door, 22, man it just won't do.
You had a lot of people, young people there who wanted to do something, who were, because of the volatile situation that was taking place in the community. It was the high levels of police brutality all across the country, particularly in the Bay Area. So there was a desire to want to be able to do something.
Regardless of whether the Mulford Act was passed, it did get attention, not only nationally, but internationally, that there were freedom fighters in this country that were willing to go to the mat on something like that, because up to that point, if you recall, armed self-defense resistance was not the norm as far as the liberation struggle was concerned.
You know, when the Panthers went to Sacramento with those guns, you know, because of the right to bear arms. Now, where could that have come from but a classroom where they're talking about the Bill of Rights? They've studied and they've reviewed, and they knew that they could go there, that they could bear these arms, and that they would not be arrested, which is what happened. And so what we saw on the news, which really blew them up, because the media did them a favor, really, was all of these young people dressed in black leather jackets with these black tams, these berets on the steps of the Capitol with these guns.
I think the misconception is that because they wore the guns, and every place you looked at that time, they showed the Panthers with their guns in Sacramento, but they were legal. I mean, they were smart enough to know all the rules and regulations about bearing arms. But that was a negative. When the press did in fact talk about the Panther, it was negative. Very, very few times did they talk about the providing support that they provided the community, the black community.
Somewhere there's a baby.
Let's forget about the guns that the Black Panthers took to the Capitol, because the guns didn't have bullets in them anyway. Let's forget about the militancy that people try to brainwash you with of the Black Panther Party. Let's look at the good, the sheer good But what they did, they took that little one incident of guns and used it forever against the Black Panthers. But the Black Panther Party did some good in this city. Outstanding good.
The gun itself was not the sum total of what our movement was about. It's a period of self-defense. But they also emphasized the fact that there was self-defense against inadequate healthcare systems, about a broken down educational system, self-defense about massive unemployment. So that was also our plight and our emphasis on self-defense, trying to get rid of some of the social inequalities that we were faced with on a day-to-day level.
When people are able to really consider their circumstances, then they will. But if there are such debilitating forces at play, they cannot. I mean, you know, if they don't have basic survival needs met. And that's why we called our programs the community survival programs.
We didn't sit back and just whine about it or cry about it. When we said we were going to give away 10,000 free bags of groceries to people in the community, that's exactly what we meant, to the number.
It's about money, which is a euphemism for power in this world that we live in. That's what frightened them. Redistribute the wealth. Oh my goodness, that's not what we meant. That we want to take everything from someone. We wanted for the people who have nothing to have something. And that doesn't compute for people who have everything. The self-centeredness breeds lack of self-awareness. And there are those people in power. So there wasn't a way that they could soften and understand what was being said. So we kept saying it.
The party realized at an early stage it was more to the struggle than just self-defense. And we became a full-fledged organization. And the Black Panther Party became a place where people came for answers to deal with situations.
The police came in with guns to shut down breakfast programs in church basements routinely. And what came into the newspapers was, Panthers teach children hate and violence. We were feeding them eggs and toast and milk.
It's 4.9 million kids are fed annually through the government's free breakfast program. Now, the government free breakfast program was started because the Black Panther Party had a free breakfast program, and we embarrassed the shadow.
If you're the richest country in the world, and you're allowing, 20% of your population, or 25% of your population to go without medical care, something is wrong.
We were doing sickle cell anemia testings in the community. We had free medical clinics right down the street from Merritt College. So there was a lot of activity with our social programs, and that's why people love us to this day, you know, because we came when they needed help.
They challenged the school systems. They weren't pleased with necessarily the quality of education that was going on in the public school system, so they started their own school.
When I went to that school and saw young people, 89 years old, doing algebra, when I saw young people, 7 and 8 years old, reading fluently, I said, now this is amazing.
One of our guiding principles was to teach children how to think and not what to think. We expected a lot of them academically, and we gave them the standardized tests because we really wanted parents and other teachers to know that we were serious. We weren't a storefront. We weren't a liberation school. We weren't an after-school program. We wanted them to go on and do well wherever they went. It was the most amazing work I've ever done because we created something out of nothing.
Those who taught them were not getting a good salary, but they did it because their heart was there. Their heart was there with what the Black Panther Party was doing.
The Panther Party, sky blue and black, staying on the attack. Black Panther Party, black shades berets, and we stomping your way. Black Panther
Requested George is from Oakland with a live report. Lloyd?
Dennis, there's an all-night teach-in going on in the student lounge of Merritt College. Last year, a campus poll indicated a majority of students wanted this lounge named in honor of Black Panther Party leaders Huey Newton and Bobby Seale.
Seeing that they were, two brothers that was big on education, and that's what they believed in, equal education for everybody.
They had a lot to contribute to Merritt College, and they were also alumni. And me being the president of the Black Student Union, that's why I felt that they started from there, and I feel that they should be recognized.
But their plans were squashed 3 days ago when the Peralta College District Board basically pulled the plug on the idea.
And we want them to know that we're very serious about this issue and that we're not going to go home until they pass the resolution.
We went on with our rebel ceremony. We had a rebel renaming ceremony that we held probably, I think it was a week or two after they initially pulled the plug on our event. The next evening was the first Peralta Board Trustees Board meeting. And so we stayed up all night trying to organize how we were going to proceed with this issue, how we were going to continue this campaign and what we were going to do. We ended up shutting down the meeting, and they weren't able to handle any business that day, and we told them that they wouldn't be able to handle any business until they voted on our issue, and hopefully it would be in favor of the students. So it showed us that, if you're on the right side of history, if you're educated, if you have legitimacy to your claims, if you covered all your bases, that they can't stop you.
Hey, if y'all won't listen to us now, we'll stay here, we'll chant all night. We got nothing to do. We want a resolution. We'd like it now, not 60 days from now, but we'd like it now.
This is where the Black Panther Party started from. So as youth from this community, we should be pushing that legacy more than anybody else.
Merritt College was this very dynamic campus. Functioning much like community colleges should function. And people felt like something was being done and that they were involved in this situation where things were beginning to happen and courses, curriculum was being shaped. So it was a very, very powerful moment in history, one that has really lost its impact on most college campuses, and certainly community colleges do not function like that, because that early campus at Merritt College was a hotbed of activism where you were actually creating activists on that campus. So it was a very powerful moment in history that hasn't been replicated since.
Our job of Panther today is to educate and organize the young people. And I tell Panthers, this is your role in life today. You are an elder now.
They can be inspired by what took place back then, but you can't duplicate what took place back then. Because what is done is done. So you can be inspired by it. And that's what I would tell them, to be inspired, to read, to be informed, to be educated, to be enlightened, to be excited, but to be able to come together and move forward from this moment, now, the present. That's the gift, the present.
The Black Panther Party has made its mark on American history and has made a positive mark on American history. Future generations will probably look back and say, that was a great group.
What the Panthers and other groups were talking about was giving people an opportunity to be successful, giving people an opportunity to get educated, to survive and to live in this country.
Become educated, share your knowledge, teach other young people how to go to college, how they can attain high grades. And if you get any monetary resources, share them with others. We're still too poor to keep everything to ourselves. Whatever you have, share it.
Huey said, spirit of people is greater than a man's technology. Definitely, it still holds true.
Every human being is born with immense power. It's not political power. It's not economic power. It is our own innate power, and it is wise and intelligent beyond measure.
Higher education is a key, indispensable necessity to organize and do what we did with 5,000 membership programs all across the country, fighting in the courts, winning 95% of all our courtroom battles and all this stuff. We did this. And we were true, dedicated political revolutionaries.
Must be set free, we're saying Bobby must be set free. Good God Almighty, said our jam is free. They say that he killed a brother, yeah, but this we know it just can't be, yeah. He's proven his love for his people, that's why Bobby must be set free, we're saying Bobby must be set free. This is what we want. An end to police brutality. This is what we want. Determine our true destiny. This is what we want. To open places where the sick can get well. This is what we want. Build better housing where me might have to dwell. How do we get it? We organize day and night. How do we get it? Keep working. We got to get it right. How do we get it? Get ready, cause we might have to fight. And if we must, we'll hold back the night. This is what we want. Our leaders to be set free. This is what we want. The truth for everyone to see. This is what we want. Struggling and striving, we got to make it through. This is what we want. Come on, good people, we got work to do. How do we get it? We organize day and night. How do we get it? Keep working, we got to get it right. How do we get it? Get ready, cause we might have to fight. And if we must, we'll hold back the night. This is what we want.
We're gonna walk on this racist power structure, and we're gonna say to the whole damn government, stick 'em up, motherfucker. This is a hold up. We come for what's ours.
For Alta TV, programs that matter.